Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Create Your Best Chapter. This is a podcast for midlife women who are experiencing a major life change, like a job loss or a divorce. And one of my intentions in starting this podcast is to let women know that they're not alone, because a lot of times we feel like we're the only ones going through something that's really challenging. And in this podcast, I bring on guests, I bring on amazing women who have experienced job loss or divorce, or sometimes both. And we talk about how they got through it. We talk about some strategies. And I've been so blessed to share and learn their wisdom and their guidance. And I'm really excited to bring that to you. And today I'm thrilled to have Kathleen Kellner on the show. Kathleen and I met at a networking event in Calgary. So just to show you the power of networking and all the amazing people that you can meet when you just put yourself out there and attend live events. So Kathleen, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here, Vera.
If you could just let the audience know a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So my name is Kathleen Kellner. I am the owner of Empowered Endings Collective, and I describe myself as an end-of-life consultant because I do a lot of things. There are people who are doulas and celebrants and other things, but the consulting side of it is sort of a newer aspect to the end-of-life realm, and it's something that has definitely caught my interest, and it's the direction that I am wanting to go with in the work that I do.
That is so fascinating. And when we met, I was just so taken by this mission of yours, this vocation of yours to be an end-of-life consultant. And I definitely want to get into what that is and what you do. But I'm so curious how you even got into this line of work. Like, was there something that got you so interested in working on something that's a kind of a difficult topic for a lot of people? It's end of life. But is there something that drew you into this?
Well, the long story, I'll make it short though. Long story is I used to be in the travel industry. I was a travel agent. I eventually got into adventure travel, which took me off the beaten path. I went to some beautiful countries and saw amazing cultures and people. And one of the things that kind of kept popping out for me is how people managed dying and death in other cultures. And I tell a story actually on my LinkedIn page about being in Thailand and literally stumbling upon this beautiful celebration event, which turned out to be a funeral. And it really struck me as to how wrong we have it, as to how we approach end of life and the whole industry and the darkness and everything around it. And so that was the very beginning of it. I eventually moved into event management, and through meeting some people, I was asked to become a celebration specialist with a company, unfortunately, which is no longer in Calgary, but it was an all-women group in a funeral home. And I was planning life celebrations, very non-traditional life celebrations. And initially was a little skeptical and wasn't sure I was going to enjoy it. And honestly, absolutely fell in love with being able to help families create a beautiful event that their person would have absolutely loved and would probably wanted to have been a part of. And the feedback I would get from families was just so wonderful. And that's kind of what took me down the path. And then I became an end-of-life doula, which at that point was something I thought I was interested in. I'm also a certified funeral celebrant. So through my education, I've just sort of keep learning about a lot of new things in a lot of areas that we need attention to. We need to be able to provide people with information. So I'm always learning, I'm always growing. There's always new things I want to bring to my work. And I hope to be doing it for a really long time.
That's amazing. And, you know, for sure, death and dying is a subject that we don't often talk about. And in fact, in our society, in our Western culture, we almost avoid it. Like, we don't want to talk about it. It's something that either brings us down or we find really hard to talk about or we're scared of. I wonder what you feel it is that we're doing wrong in our society with regards to death and dying.
the biggest thing is what you've said, is the fear around talking about it. And I mean, I find time and time again, when I meet people in networking and social events and that type of thing, and of course the inevitable question, what do you do? I always hesitate a little bit because I know I may be, some people are very interested, other people kind of say nice to meet you and walk away. But the majority of people I find want to talk to me. They want to share their stories, good, bad, and otherwise. They want to share their thoughts with me of what they see for themselves. And my very first question to anyone when they're sharing with me is, have you shared this with your family? A lot of them not. And the other question is, have you documented your wishes? And I'm not talking the will. Everybody thinks I've got a will and I'm done. That is the beginning of the work that needs to be done. But it's also shocking how few people actually have a current and accessible, a lot of work to do in this area. And a huge part of it is giving people the space and the permission to be able to have these conversations.
You're cutting out a little bit, Kathleen, so we may have to repeat some of that. But what I heard was that it's not, people
Yeah,
do
sorry,
tend
I
to
just, it completely,
That's okay. We can redo it. We can do it again.
darn, it's cutting out. Ugh, I can, I felt everything froze, and I've got I've got nothing else on. My Wi-Fi is only on here.
Sometimes
I don't know what's
sometimes
going
it
on.
just kind of has a little glitch sometimes. No worries.
Yeah. Darn. Sorry. So what, can you just edit? Can we go back and?
Yeah, well, I'll edit it out
we
for
have
the
to start?
podcast. No worries. Yeah, I'll edit it
Yeah,
out.
but we don't have to start from the very beginning, right? We can just continue.
We can just continue. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So do you want to ask
that's
me?
interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's interesting, Kathleen. I think a lot of us do think that once we have a will, that is kind of okay, we're done, and even that feels super uncomfortable, and it feels like something, okay, we know we need to do, so we pay the lawyer, and then we kind of shelve that will away. But like what you're saying is, no, there's a lot of other things that go alongside that, or even more than that. So what would those things be that you think that people really want, but maybe feel scared to talk about with their families?
A lot of it is like the celebration work that I do. A lot of people have a clear idea. When I die, I want to be, I was just talking to somebody recently, and they want to be put in their cremated remains to be put in fireworks and a fireworks display set off. That can be done. There's lots of really cool things that can be done. I mean, not everybody is that creative, but people quite often have a very clear idea. I mean, something as simple as cremation over burial. There's a lot of people, majority of people have a very clear idea of what their preference is. And to be able to ensure that your wishes are honored, you have to have the conversations, or at least the documentation to support that. Legacy planning, which when I talk about legacy planning, people think, putting your name on a wing of a library or a university, which is not at all what that is. Legacy planning can be very intimate. It can be very much about who gets grandma's favorite recipe book and the quilts that she made and that type of stuff. That can very much be a part of legacy planning as well. There's just a whole lot of conversations currently now with social media. There's a lot of conversations that have to happen about what happens to your social media, who has control of it. Does it just live on in infamy, or is somebody able to go in and access all of your information and do with it what you want done with it, rather than just leaving it? So there's many conversations to be had.
Mm-hmm. And so in your work as an end of life consultant, do you facilitate these conversations, or how do you advise people to start even having these conversations with their family?
Yeah, generally what I do, I mean, it depends. Every family, every situation is different. Some people are just one-on-one and they want to work with me, and we go through a checklist. I have a pretty thorough checklist of things. Other people, especially larger families or families where maybe there is disagreement between certain family members, I almost act as like a mediator to help bring everybody together or help them understand their person's decision making. That's a very big part of it that I'm finding. And just information, getting the information. What are my options? Like, a lot of people don't really realize what their options are and what we have accessible to them in Canada. So again, it's information and education is a huge part of it.
Yeah. I know that for a lot of us in midlife, we are now faced with dealing with or caring for our parents who are aging, who are getting sick, and who are passing away. And so that's kind of what even I've been dealing with in my own personal life. My partner's mom just recently passed away. And so I'm seeing like, wow, all these conversations that are happening that need to happen. And then sort of the aftermath of the funeral. What do you do with all these things? Like you said, social media and all the stuff that's in the house. And so it's almost letting me also confront or come to terms with my own mortality, that at some point in time, I'm going to be having these conversations. And so it's almost like this entry point, like, okay, we're working with our parents now in their end of life, but I know that your target audience is midlife, to get them started to think about what they want now, like in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, not wait until the 80s. Am I understanding that correctly, Kathleen?
Absolutely. And the catalyst for a lot of my clients is exactly what you spoke of, losing a parent or parents and realizing the enormous amount of work. And a lot of our parents didn't speak about any of this. They had the will. The will might not, nobody's seen the will, or they pull up a will that's 50 years old and they don't know if there's any other wills. And so a lot of us are people in our age group that are managing these situations and realizing we don't want this for ourselves and our children and our loved ones, and we want to better prepare them for our time. So that's a huge part of it. And yeah, I don't, people say, well, do you go to seniors' homes and market? And absolutely not. My clientele, I want people healthy and happy and willing to have the conversations and document their wishes long before they ever need them. Is absolutely my hope. And to teach them also to maintain those documents once a year, go and revisit everything, review, because of course situations change, ideas change, plans change. It's just a good thing to have some accessible documentation that you can be on top of.
So do you find that once people start having these conversations with you, and once you kind of break the door open, like I know a lot of people kind of run away from you at events, like, no, I don't want to talk about death and dying. But once you start that conversation, do you find that people get more comfortable having those conversations?
Absolutely. Once they realize, first of all, the amount of work and then the number of questions that need to be answered, and just their comfort level, giving them, again, the permission. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to maybe want something non-traditional, or, that maybe hasn't been done before in their family, that you don't necessarily have to go with the same route. I mean, the other big thing that's happening, again, with our demographic is a lot of people are moving away from their traditional family religions, and they don't necessarily have a family church or a home church. It used to be that that's automatically where you went to. As a celebrant, I do a lot of secular services, which they don't have an affiliation, but they still want some element of religion or spirituality to be a part of their services. So that's another aspect of it that requires some conversation and discussion around what their wishes are. But absolutely, once I sort of open that conversation and give them the space and the information, it becomes much, much easier. Like so many things now, we're talking about mental health. We're talking about a lot of things that used to be very taboo. And this is just another one of those topics that once we give them the tools and the permission, it's much, much easier to have the conversations.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me that it is kind of a taboo subject, or that it's a challenging subject, because really death is the one thing that unites us in life. Like, it's the one thing we all have in common. I mean, we have lots in common. We have way more in common than I think we have not in common, despite what's happening out there in the social media landscape or the political landscape. But really, like, everybody dies, everyone goes through this, everyone has parents or everyone has friends or family that pass away. And so it does unite us. So I think what you do is so important, because it's opening up that conversation to something that we all face. We're all going to need to face whether we want to or not. And so I find what you do is quite empowering, actually, because let's have the conversation. Let's get ourselves aware and educated. And also let's do it our way, right? Like, let's do what we really want to do in death as in life, right?
Exactly. I mean, then my company name, Empowered Endings, is exactly how that evolved. I want to empower people. And my tagline is to be the author of your final chapter, so that you have the ability to put, and things like, as we all know, things never go according to plan, or don't usually go according to plan. But if you have a plan and you have a blueprint, even if it doesn't go exactly the way you want it to go, at least it is a resource and a guide for people who are around you, who are helping you on that journey. And it's much better to have some kind of a guide than nothing at all, and just have a whole lot of questions. I mean, what I tell my clients, the worst place to have these conversations is in the hallway of a hospital in a time of crisis, or worse yet, in the funeral home trying to make arrangements. And you're, heightened grief and anxiety, and there's so much emotion. Even an expected death, somebody who's been ill and it's an expected death, it's still a very, very, very difficult time to navigate. And the more tools you have and more information you have, then you spend your time doing the grieving and the honoring rather than the worrying and anxiety of trying to figure things out.
So Kathleen, I want to take a bit of a step back and ask you about your own job loss journey. I know that you lost a job, and that ultimately catapulted you into going into your business full time. Can you share that story for us, please?
Sure. I mean, my journey, I was in event management. I had my own business for a number of years. Just before COVID, I actually moved into property management, which timing wise was perfect because events during COVID obviously were non-existent. And I worked in property management, and I've had a few different things back and forth, and contracts and a permanent position. And then I went back to a contract, and I just have been doing a lot of bouncing around. I also should mention that I was separated 3 years ago. So in the midst of career and everything else, and, a divorce process. So it's been a pretty tumultuous 3 years. I finally realized, actually, I had taken on a position as a contractor and was assuming it was going to become permanent. And at the end of a 6-month contract, they said, thank you, but no thank you. We're going in a different direction, which was pretty difficult, honestly. And at the time, I was telling people, this is the universe's way of kicking me in the butt and making me go the direction I shouldn't be going. But I've actually since changed that, because it wasn't a kick in the butt. It was a very gentle guidance to the direction that the work I want to do, the work I feel empowered, the work that I feel is truly, truly important, and where I find it's not a job. It's absolutely my passion. And it took a pretty bumpy road to get here, but I finally have realized that this is exactly where I need to be, and trust myself and my talents and my support group and everything else, and move forward in the work that I absolutely want to be doing, which is where I find myself now.
That's so beautiful. And I agree with you that the universe is always giving us, whether it's gentle nudges or whether it's not so gentle nudges, it's being open to that nudge or to that kick in the butt that maybe we're not meant to be doing what we're doing right in this minute. And I think I know for me, when I was in that position working in corporate before I got laid off, I wasn't happy in that spot. I was already kind of looking for something else. And so then when I got laid off, as devastating as that was, and as hard as that was, and as humiliating as that was, deep down, I was like, I actually kind of asked for this. Like, right? I asked the universe for something different. And because I wasn't willing or able or courageous enough to take that first step myself, the universe always says, okay, well, here you go, right? I'm going to open a door for you. I'm going to open a window for you and take that. So I so appreciate that. And I'm curious how you leaned into trust and how you stay in that trust that this is going to be your path and that everything's going to be okay. Because I know as an entrepreneur, it's so up and down, and there's days when you're like, what am I doing? How is this going to work? So how do you stay in trust with yourself?
A lot of a lot of support from very dear friends and family that are assuring me this is where I'm meant to be. Every time I work with a client, whether it's celebrant work or doula work or consulting, the feedback that I'm getting from people, the feedback from people like yourself that acknowledge to me how deeply important this work is. And and just having to trust it and moving forward. And some days are a great leap forward and some days are 3 steps back, but you just keep powering through. I spend a lot of time hiking and in nature, and I spent a lot of time in anxiety and fear, and I've learned to kind of move past all of that with a lot of help again, and just really reminding myself every single day what my purpose is, and knowing 100% in my heart that this is absolutely my purpose and the direction that I need to be moving forward in.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. So what I'm hearing is community, right? A supportive community that you are intentional about building around you, but also tapping into the support, asking for help, asking for support. I'm hearing nature, right? So getting out of nature, looking after your health, looking after your mental wellness by the healing power of nature, and reminding yourself, right? So it's that self-talk. Like I always say that anxiety and fear are never really going to go away. Like they're always along for the ride, but it's up to us to decide how far they can control us and how far they can influence us, right? So it is that daily reminder, that self-talk. This is my purpose. Look at all the great things that people are saying about me, and really looking at the impact that you're making on those around you. And I think I agree with that. It kind of keeps me going as well. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. How can people get in touch with you or learn more about what it is that you do, Kathleen?
Absolutely. So I am on social media, although I have to admit I need to work on my fine-tuning my social media. I'm on Instagram under empowered underscore endings underscore collective followers, and I promise I'm going to start posting more regularly. I do have a website, empowered.ca, and UK is my direct email. And yeah, I love talking to people. If you don't know what you want or you need, or you just have some more questions for me, I'm absolutely open to having that conversation and see where we can go.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put all those links in the show notes so people can look at your website, connect with you on Instagram, and also connect with you directly via email, because I think what you do is, like I said, it's just so needed. And let's open up the conversation. Like for me, having this podcast is about having conversations around sometimes really tough, delicate subjects. But if we don't talk about it, it's just going to sit there. It's going to get us into more fear and more anxiety and more worry. And we don't need that. Right? What we need is to connect with people. We need to learn strategies. We need to learn different skill sets. We need to learn different perspectives. And we need to learn to become more empowered. So again, I love the fact that you have that in your business name, because I do believe that as we empower, as women get more empowered, as we help empower each other, that's really how we can make the greatest impact in the world, however that means to you, right? Whatever that looks like. Everyone has to tap into their own unique skills, their own unique talents, their own unique perspective in order to make, the greater impact. And that's what we need right now. We need people and women who are banding together, who are going out into the world with confidence and with kindness and with empathy to create a better world for ourselves. So I acknowledge your part in that, Kathleen. It was amazing talking with you. We'll have to do another part at some point in time as well to talk more about other things. But in the meantime, I wish you all the best. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. And I do have one more little thing. What I always like to tell people is have these conversations. The amount of peace that you get on the other side of this hard work is very, very profound and worth it. And like anything else, the hard work, it will ultimately give you that peace at the other end of it. So that's, I think, the most important message for me today is to do the hard work and get to that point where you know that you've got that taken care of.
Oh, and peace is what we need more of, right? We need peace in our heart and peace in our body and peace in our life. And so this is just one part of that. So thank you so much, Kathleen. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome. And thank you so much, Vera. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.